Hello students, welcome back to history class of standard 8. This is second lesson from trade to territory. Students, we know India was ruled by England once upon a time, and we got the freedom from England on 15th August 1947. But do you know how British became the ruler of this country? Students, this is a very interesting story to know about how Britain became rulers of this country. So today, let us explore into the lesson from trade to territory. Before studying about how England or the East India Company came to India and they become ruler, there was one powerful ruler who was ruling over India, was a Mughal ruler. Aurangzeb was said to be the last powerful Mughal ruler of India. And Aurangzeb, after the death of Aurangzeb in the year 1707, his empire was split into small provinces and they were ruled by Nawabs. And at the same time, there were other chieftains and other jamindars and other rulers who emerged during the same time, and especially the Rajputs, the Sikhs, the Mysore, Marathas and other rulers were ruling at the same time. So students, let us begin how the entry of East India Company into India. In the year 1600 CE, the East India Company was founded at London. And Queen Elizabeth gave charter to the mercantile class. Now here the question arises, what is mercantile? Mercantile is a business enterprise, and they were dependent only on the profit earned from the business. So there was a mercantile, and the charter was given. What is charter? It was a right to trade solely in the eastern part of India. So that is East India Company. The charter was given to them by Elizabeth, and the mercantile class came to India. But do you know, before the coming of British into India, there was one more country that already arrived in India. They settled in India, and that was Portugal. Portugal, the Vasco da Gama, who was the first sailor who discovered sea route to India. He reached India at Kerala in Calicut on 17th May 1498. So after Vasco da Gama, he came over here and he took many precious stones, spices, and different types of commodities which had heavy demand in European markets, like even cotton textiles, silk, pepper, cardamom, cloves, this type of spices. So that somewhat 60 times profit he earned from Indian trade, and this attracted other European traders like Dutch, France and England. So this company started coming to India. So with this, there began the rivalry, the battle and the wars between all these forces, European forces on the Indian land. So this trade and politics now became inseparable. So British East India Company now started with their expansion in Indian territory. So how they become ruler of India? So let's see over to Bengal. So Bengal, which was very rich province once upon a time, it was ruled by Nawabs of Bengal. Murshid Quli Khan, Alivardi Khan and his son Siraj-ud-Dawla, who ruled in this province. When British started concentrating on this province, at that time they first built a Fort William in Calcutta on the river Hooghly. So there were three villages, small villages, that later on fortified and grew into a city called Calcutta City. There used to live factors. Who are factors? Factors were the company traders. And the people or the traders who used to come all the way from England, they used to set and settle in this particular fortified city. So it became a very important trading center for Britishers. But they had clash with the local Nawabs. Why clash? There is a reason. Because they wanted to have free trade in Bengal, and for this reason they received a farman from Mughal Empire. What is farman? Farman was a license to trade freely in the province of Bengal. So this hurt the Nawabs of Bengal, and there was a confrontation, there was a rivalry, there was a battle between the Nawabs and the British East India Company. So Siraj-ud-Dawla, when he became the Nawab of Bengal, at that time he opposed companies' trade expansion in Bengal region. So they started, there was a first battle in Plassey. In the year 1757, this Battle of Plassey was fought between Siraj-ud-Dawla, Nawab of Bengal, and East India Company. Robert Clive was Governor General at that time. When he realized that Siraj-ud-Dawla is attacking on company at Calcutta with a 30,000 military might, with a 30,000 army, that time Robert Clive was at Madras Presidency. And from Madras, he took his naval fleet and came via sea route through Bay of Bengal and came till Plassey, and there was outbreak of Battle of Plassey in the year 1757. The very important thing of this Battle of Plassey was that British won Battle of Plassey and they became master of Bengal province. But against the 30,000 military or the army of Siraj-ud-Dawla, how Robert Clive managed to win that battle with only 2,000 soldiers? So it is a question, and this question actually British were not capable enough to fight with the army across. But that's why they decided to use one policy against Indian ruler, that was divide and rule policy. And what is the divide and rule policy? They asked one of the commander-in-chief, Mir Zafar, to remain on their side, come on their side. They bribed him and asked him to make the next Nawab of Bengal. So when this was outbroken, at that time Nawab fought very courageously, but Mir Zafar remained silent, he remained passive and did not participate in the battle. So this helped Robert Clive to gain victory in the Battle of Plassey. Siraj-ud-Dawla was later on assassinated by the Britishers, and the Nawabship or the next ruler of Bengal was made, Mir Zafar was made a new Nawab. So Nawab was actually, he was just the titular head or the puppet in the hands of British. We know what is puppet. Puppet is a kind of toy, string toy, with the help of which the toys used to dance. Same way, here Mir Zafar was just a toy in the hands of British. But as Mir Zafar realized the game that is being played by the Britishers against him, he revolted. He resisted to British. And British don't wanted this resistance. So they changed the Nawab. The Mir Qasim, another commander, he was brought in the place of Mir Zafar. So Mir Qasim also, after a few days, he also realized the double game, the cross game of British, and he also started opposing British East India Company. So when this was realized, the person who was taken away from the Nawabship was brought back, that was Mir Zafar again. So there was quite confusion in Bengal, and at the end, Mir Qasim, he decided to wage a battle between against the British East India Company. And this way, there was a battle fought in the year 1764 that was known as, famous in history as Battle of Buxar. So that was fought, but unfortunately, Nawab was defeated, Mir Qasim was defeated, and in this way, the whole of Bengal fell into the hands of East India Company. So this is the way how Bengal came in the hands of East India Company. So now, after having total control over Bengal province, now their desire increased to accumulate more wealth, and for that matter, they concentrate on the next region, that is the south of India, Tamil region. There was one important kingdom called Shivagangai, which was ruled by Nachiyar dynasty. And the Nachiyar king, who was defeated and killed by British company when they waged war over here. But her wife, Queen Velu Nachiyar, and other minister, when they escaped from their kingdom and they took asylum in the neighboring state, and from there they reorganized their military and fought back with a full vigor, with a full strength against the British. And from 1780 to 1790, 90, this Rani Velu Nachiyar remained as a queen ruler of Shiva Gangai, and this was a big threat given by a woman ruler to British. And let me tell you one thing, there was a woman army, and the chief, the commander-in-chief of this woman army was a Quili who was a Dalit girl. So that is how they were given a big opposition in Tamil region at Shiva Gangai. From there, they concentrate on Mysore region. Mysore, at that time, it was ruled by Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan is known as Tiger of Mysore because he was a big threat to British East India Company. Tipu had his naval fleet, his navy, and very powerful navy, and from Malabar coast, he used to travel towards the Gulf region, the Gulf countries, and he had a trade relation with the neighboring countries over here. So this was what not liked by the British East India Company. They treated him as a main opposition, as a main component, and that's why later on they waged 4 prolonged wars with Mysore. The father of Tipu Sultan was Hyder Ali. In the beginning, from 1765 to 67, there was first Anglo-Mysore War. Second, from 1780 to 1784, second Anglo-Mysore War. Third, 90 to 92, and fourth in the year 1799 at Srirangapattanam. With this last fight with the Mysore, the Tipu Sultan lost his life, and after that whole of Mysore went into the hands of British East India Company. But Tipu Sultan was very powerful in this region because he used for the first time the missile technology. He stopped British East India Company mingling into the trade with Mysore. The Malabar coast was totally banned for the company, and that's why company wanted this enemy to be eliminated from South India, and surely that aim of English came true by eliminating Tipu Sultan from Mysore region. After Mysore, British East India Company turned on to the Maratha Empire. Maratha Empire, which was very powerful empire at that time. It had its boundary expanded into Afghanistan, North India, part of South, and Bengal, and this whole province. So this was the huge area which was ruled by Marathas, and this was a great challenge for British East India Company. First, they had a prolonged war for 7 years, from 1775 to 1782. During the 7 years, British fought against the Maratha, but Marathas were so powerful, so valiant that they could not able to defeat and subdue the power of Maratha. So they realized Marathas are really more brave than us, more capable than us, and we can't defeat. So they signed one treaty for the next 20 years. That was called Treaty of Salbai. And that remained for 20 years. And what was that treaty? It was a friendship treaty with Marathas, and Marathas will be just alliance in the military of East India Company, and they will be helping hand for the East India Company, and both will go together. So this was what the friendship treaty. So later on, second war that was fought by Anglo or the English with Maratha was in the year 1803 to 1805, the second. Now Marathas were shaken. They were half defeated. And in the year 1870 to 1818, the third war was Anglo-Maratha war was fought, and with this third in the year 1818, Maratha regime was ended. The Marathas were defeated by British East India Company, and East India Company now became the master of vast region of India, so, expanding from the Bengal to the east, the Madras, and towards the west, the Malabar coast and all these areas. So whole of north, south, east, western region fell into the hands of East India Company. But one thing we should know about the Marathas were ruled through confederacy. Confederacy means states or the provinces. There were 5 chief families: the Peshwas, the Bhosles, the Gaikwad, the Holkar and the Sindhiyas. Maratha Empire. They concentrate on northwest frontier of India. Why northwest frontier of India? Because they had a fear of Russia being attacked and enter into Asian side. So that's why they wanted to have their stronghold on northeastern frontier. So they waged a war with Afghanistan for 4 years, from 1838 to 1842. And along with that, they also had a battle with Egypt and Burma on the eastern side. So this way, there was an expansion of their rule and power on the boundaries of India. In Karnataka, there was one kingdom, dynasty called Kittur dynasty. Rani Channamma was a woman ruler who was ruling in this kingdom. And she posed a great challenge to British. When British East India Company attacked on Kittur with a 2,000 military fleet and 400 gunmen, at that time Rani Channamma managed to defeat British East India Army. And this, she also signed agreement with British East India Company that they will not again attack on her kingdom. But you know, as British, they are always not keeping their word. They came back and they attacked again on Rani Channamma's kingdom. But they were again not successful. But how they successful? Through a policy of divide and rule. They betrayed 2 ministers of Rani Channamma, and Rani Channamma was captured at the end. She was put in jail in the year 1825 and she died in the jail later on somewhat in the year 1829. So this is how she was captured. But the freedom struggle, the fight to safeguard Kittur was not ended. There was one brave statesman of Kittur named as Sangolli Rayanna. He reunified the people and the army of Kittur and he fought very valiantly against the Britishers. By the year 1830, he was captured. Rayanna was captured and he was hanged publicly in front of collector's office somewhere in Bengal. So that is what, this way, the Kittur also went into the hands of British East India Company. Now there was last challenge in front of British East India Company, and that was Punjab. Punjab, which was ruled by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who ruled Punjab from 1799 to 1839. He reorganized 12 misla means provinces or the states which were scattered after the death of Guru Gobind Singh. He reorganized them. The powerful military was built by him, and that posed a great threat to the British East India Company. British East India Company had a friendly relationship with Maharaja Ranjit Singh, but after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the whole of Punjab went into the hands of British by the year 1849. So now, next target was Delhi, and by 1857 there was a huge revolt in Delhi. It is famous as uprising of 1857, or it is famous as First War of India's Independence. So this way, the whole of India came in the hand of British. So now let us, after studying how British came as a trader somewhere in 1600 AD, and later on how they set up their factories on the western coast, then they concentrated Madras, Calcutta and this region, and later on 1757 to 1857, this 100 years period, the journey of their British East India Company as a trader to the ruler is completed. Now they actually became ruler of India. Now there were some policies, administrative policies that were adopted by British East India Company in India. One, subsidiary alliance. What was this subsidiary alliance? As per this alliance, as per this agreement, any Indian state was not supposed to put or keep their own military. Instead of that, the company will maintain
the military for the state, and whenever the state will require the security, at that time they will provide them with the military force. So this way they were paralyzed, the Indian states were paralyzed. This was not even known to Indian states. And the first state that was signed with subsidiary alliance was after the death of Tipu Sultan, was Wadiyar family from Mysore. The next one is the Charter Act of 1813. This Charter Act gave the spread of religion, Christian religion in India. So later on we had paramountcy policy. What is this paramountcy policy? Paramountcy means supreme, sovereign. So British, being they had established their rule all over India, and they were the major rulers of India. They got the power. They were the supreme in India. So the other rulers had to listen to the Britishers. So that is what the paramountcy policy. And the next one was the Doctrine of Lapse. This was designed by Lord Dalhousie, who was a governor from 1848 to 1856. So during these 8 years, he annexed many small and big states of India in British East India Company. So what is the Doctrine of Lapse? Doctrine means a policy, and lapse means permanently that party is lapsed, gone, lost to India and joined into the paramountcy of British East India Company. So that was what the policy designed by this Lord Dalhousie. So as per this, more than 30 states of India were merged, were lapsed to British East India Company. The examples like Satara, Sambhalpur, Jhansi, and so many. So these states also went in the hands of British by this policy of Doctrine of Lapse. At that time, British also set up criminal courts in India, which were known as Fauzdari Adalat. There were civil courts, they were known as Diwani Adalat. Even the Supreme Court was set up at that time under the Regulating Act of 1773. The collectors were appointed in every district, and what is the function of collector? To collect the revenue, to maintain law and order, and see the functioning of the district. They were assisted by the judges, police, and the darogas. So this was what the functioning, the setup, the system that was applied. Company also changed their army. The army system was changed, and they brought, instead of a cavalry was a decline, the horse force, there was a decline, and instead of that, the infantry, the land force was given more stress. Especially they were given the modern weapons, modern guns like musket and matchlock. Actually today this musket and matchlocks are very old fashioned, but during that time they were modern. So along with this there was uniform military culture. Military culture was brought in. What is that military culture? The soldiers from different regiments, they were given compulsory training. They were provided with the different skills, and discipline was the integral part of this training program. So along with that, there were some regiments. British, whenever they set up their army, in that army they had some regiments. The first, the Maratha regiment, the Sikh regiment, the Rajput regiment, Mahar regiment, Gurkha regiment, and so many. So this is our lesson from trade to territory. In this lesson, let us conclude, let us have a summary of this lesson. What we studied, the first is East India Company transformed from trader to colonial rule. There were some steamships and railways also introduced in India during the same time. We must be knowing that when before the coming of steamships, when they were traveling by the ships, old ships, that time British used to travel for 6 to 8 months. They used to take the time span of 6 to 8 months to travel from Britain to India. And with the invention of the steamships, inaugural of steamships, they could reach India faster, and that is only within 3 weeks. So this was a gift for British, and also the railway line was set up in India, and this was again reached into the nooks and corners of India, and that helped British to expand their rule more effectively in India. So last part, elsewhere, what had happened during the same period? If you think of South Africa, on the Cape of South Africa, we know there was world's biggest slave market used to take place, and this slave markets means the human being was sold, like how in the markets the fish, the meat and the commodities are sold. Alright, so here the people were sold, the human being, the man, woman, children were sold at the tip of South Africa, that is also called Cape Town nowadays. So there was a slave trade, and this slave trade, there was a human being was put on auction, and that was also abolished. People realized the disadvantages of slavery, and this was banned, this was abolished somewhere by 1834. So this is our lesson from trade to territory, the journey of 100 years of how British East India Company came to India and they acquired as a ruler of India, they became ruler of India. So this is our lesson from trade to territory.